Mm.
All right, so now I push the record button and it says that we are recording.
Recording.
Yeah, so that's a good, that's a huge. And like I said, I've never hosted this, so why don't you talk and I'm just going to play with buttons and you can just kind of, I guess, imagine that somebody's watching you for the first time and try speaking to them, explaining who you are, because they just see this guy on a screen. So imagine putting yourself in that position, and I'm going to probably mute my audio, let you talk, and it's going to record, and I'm just going to play around on this end. You might see the screen move and whatnot, and we'll just try that. How's that sound?
Excellent.
All right, let's do it.
I did notice a bit of lag between your words and your visual lip movement. So am I lagging my voice and video? Or does it look like it's synced?
Yours looks synced. I can see that mine does not look synced.
Yeah.
But we're probably, I'm most likely going to be upgrading to a much better computer after we get rolling. But for now, this is, my video looks poor. Yours looks good. I'm going to go back to mute.
Okay. So good morning. This is Dr. William Courtney. Been in the area of dietary non-psychoactive cannabis for maybe 15 years. Used to have a practice, I still have a practice in California with about 8,000 patients, and I've been involved in over 18,000 interviews with those people. Also currently doing consultations around the world, from Africa to Asia to Ireland, and all points in between. And it's always best, if possible, to take a look at some of the YouTubes. There's one called Leaf, which is quite old, but it introduces Kristen, I think at that point, Piskuski, now Kristen Courtney, and myself, and kind of goes over a lot of the basics that we had up till that time, which was primarily when you use the plant as food, when you eat it raw, it's the lack of heat that preserves a lot of the qualities and also allows you to dramatically increase the quantity in terms of concentrations, because it's the conversion of the THC acid into THC that creates the psychoactive effect. And there's a pretty strong limit on the amount of THC that most people are comfortable with. I mean, there is a range. Some people can do 3x, 4x, with 1x being roughly 10 milligrams of THC, which is also the same thing as 10,000 micrograms. And the reason I convert milligrams to micrograms is if we look at how the other members of the mammalian kingdom use cannabis, they're in the 80 to 100 microgram range. Humans are the only ones that have figured out how to increase that dose to 10,000. And like I said, some individuals will do a 2x edible, 3x, 4x. And so that's equivalent to 20, 30, 40,000 micrograms, while a 200-pound deer is pretty satisfied with 100 micrograms. So the difference between the two is when you're using raw cannabis, you're also going to be getting the medicinal acidic cannabinoids, and that's a particularly special and critically important class of molecules. They are quite delicate, meaning that they'll break down at room temperature. You just dry the plant and leave them in a dry environment, cool, dark, and 6 months, 12 months later, somewhere between 20 and 50% of the non-psychoactive THC that carboxyl acid group will break off because it's such a delicate bond. And then you create THC, which is the psychoactive component. And so when you do that, that really puts a restriction on the amount of cannabinoids you can use. If you have a chance to take a look at the Department of Health and Human Services from the United States government, they have a patent called cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. And in that document, which I would highly recommend. You go to Google Patents, put the number 6,630,507 as the patent number, pull the patent up and download a copy, print it, read it 10, 20, 30 times, 40 times. It's every time you read it, you'll discover new things that you somehow managed to miss over the first time. People that are not deep into science, you can skip over a lot of the kind of detailed chemistry, but the general effective oral human dosage schedule obviously is a chapter or a paragraph that you want to focus on. And it's a very good read. You know, it is, I think it was 2003 maybe that the patent issued, so it's quite old, but obviously the plant's been around for 34 million years or something. So the plant is much older than the patent, fortunately. So, but anyways, the patent has a lot of useful information. And like I said, one of the most important things is dosing, because you'll find a lot of questions about what is an adequate dose. Dosing has actually fallen off quite dramatically from that patent. That patent is kind of an acute, if you have, say you have a heart attack or you have a stroke, you've cut off the blood supply to a tissue that is very oxygen dependent, the brain or the heart, and the tissue that is downstream from the reduced oxygen flow will become ischemic and will begin to die or infarct. And the use of cannabinoids in that particular situation is quite dramatic, in that what it does is as an anti-ischemic, it protects the cells from the hyperoxic or the hypoxic environment because it's an antioxidant. So you get these reactive oxygen species formed and reactive nitrogen species. And those damage cell membranes, can lead to all kinds of cell death. But the cannabinoids come in and neutralize those ROSs and NOSs, reactive oxygen species, and therefore dramatically limit the progression of the heart attack. I mean, they put you normally in a cardiac care or an intensive care unit where they monitor, after the initial event, they monitor you sometimes for days, because the size of the heart attack keeps increasing and increasing and increasing over the next 2 to 3 days. And so if that dead tissue area gets large enough, it can actually maybe cross over a nerve bundle, which can produce an arrhythmia. And suddenly on your 2nd or 3rd day post heart attack, you can develop VTAC or atrial fib or some arrhythmia that would require putting a pacemaker in to capture the heart and slow its rate down so that it continues to function. So during that period, if you're using these potent antioxidants, you can actually dramatically limit the progression of that disease process. And there are some indications that you can actually reduce the final size of the heart attack or myocardial infarction, the area of that infarct, by upwards of 50%, which can be a life and death difference. So that if you take it after the event, say you have a heart attack and all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I'm going to start using
Hey,
some
doctor.
high CB. Yes.
I just brought you off mute just for 1 second. Do you know how to put a background around you on the screen where it'll show like you're in the field or you're in another area? Have you ever done that before?
I haven't, but probably if you could tell me how, we could figure it out.
Well, I think we're both figuring it out at the same time. I don't know how either. So let's do that, and let's figure that out right now. And that'll give, because I know a lot of people do that. Okay, so what you want to do, if you're on a desktop, do you see down at the bottom where it shows where you can stop your video and or mute your camera? Should be on the left at the bottom. At least that's what I'm seeing.
Stop video and mute.
Okay, so right next to the stop video, there should be like an arrow. And inside there, it says, if you click on that, it gives you options. And mine shows choose virtual background.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to turn your video back on.
Yeah.
Mine's on, and I'm going to choose a video. I'm going to choose a background. It shows I have backgrounds and filters. I've got one here that shows grass. That's kind of cool. And
I've got black and none.
oh, well, now it's showing.
Oh, there's video filters. Oh no, we want backgrounds.
Yeah, there's one with San Francisco. There's one like you're in outer space.
Sheesh.
I have a green screen. I don't want to put I have a green computer doesn't meet the requirements of this feature without a green screen. Oh, okay. So I guess try Earth. That one doesn't.
And all these are under background and filters?
Yeah, that's what I see. Background and filters. It shows me in outer space on the couch.
Sweetness.
Yeah, I'm out there, man.
Gallery.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm over at the recording thing because my background filters are just black. I know. So I have to find out how to import some. General video.
Shows that I can download a filters package.
And that's under the filters button?
Well, so where you see, if yours looks the same as mine.
Add image. Okay, so it says.
Yeah, there you go. Add image. That's what I went into.
Okay, so then I go to.
And then I clicked on video filters as opposed to virtual backgrounds. And then I'm downloading a filters package.
Sheesh. Application, server application.
I'll be right back again.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
Well, it shows I've got a lot more video filters now. And I'm going to try one. Give myself some cool sunglasses. And I'm going to go to my virtual backgrounds and add images. Choose background image. Well, it looks like it's going into my, looks like, so I guess what you can do is if you have a camera, here you go, is that you can, because it's showing here that I'm going to be able to choose my background image from my computer. So that basically gives room for using whatever image a person wants for the background. Download an image, take a picture of an image, and then add it. Digo, vaya a ponerla ya. El plato. Trae el plato. Oh, ahí. So which that's pretty cool. Because I got some pictures in here, and you're probably finding yourself a nice picture.
Is it shown up over there?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Solomon's Treasure icon. Cool. So that opens up the icon in the back. That's pretty freaking sweet. Cool.
Yeah.
On. Can you see me?
I can.
All right, let me close the settings down. Yeah. Well, look at you. You're in your. You're in. Is that your yard?
Yeah, it's that little turbine house, and I believe you can see the upper house up the hill from it.
Yeah, I can see that up there. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nice little cabin.
Well, yeah. So it looks like we're figuring out some of the pretty important things.
Yeah, I could get to I mean, the problem was I couldn't quite open gallery where I have a lot of photos, but I can kind of look around, and if this is a little too busy, we could get it into more of just a plain jungle view.
Yeah, we could do that. And I'm gonna see what I can do as far as my video filter. I'm gonna take my sunglasses off. I only wear my sunglasses at night.
So I can't quite figure out how it was that I got to change it in the first place.
So it's gonna be next to where you have your camera button. There's an arrow.
Oh yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And find FaceTime, virtual background, and add image. This has got text.
Oh wow, that's an even cooler picture.
So this is up at where the water enters the microhydro system, looking down the valley at the houses and workshops and stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm seeing it get squared away here a little bit better. All right. So there we go. We got some pretty cool backgrounds, and it seems like this thing is still recording. So what we can do, let's take a 15-20 minute break. Call me. I'll set up another Zoom call for 12. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what this video looks like, see if we've got audio, and then I will email you the next room link, and 12:05 somewhere on there. I'll meet back with you in that room. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
All right. So we're recording. This is round 2, and I got good news. Round 1 worked out really well. It's 20 minutes. And the cool thing is the software automatically put the person on the screen who's talking. So when you were talking, it would switch to you. When I was talking, it would switch to me. And whenever I set the split view, which I'm about to do right now, it went to split view screen. So the recording in and of itself is amazing. That's really cool. And to take it to another level, it would require, I believe, a purchase for an upgrade, which the minimum is $15, or I could do the $20 and go an even bigger step up. But with those, from what I gather online, from watching YouTube videos, I'll be able to streamcast it directly to a YouTube channel. So I think I want to go ahead and upgrade to a Pro. I might have to reset the computer, and that way we can get ready for a 1 o'clock live stream straight to the YouTube channel, and that would be like the episode 5 that's going to be on. How does that sound to you?
Excellent.
Very, very cool. Your background looks really cool, and your hair looks really nice. And why don't you say a couple more things here?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. So, and your background with the green globe, the whole world in my hands, and you're the center of the world. That's an excellent backdrop.
Thanks, I
So
appreciate that.
I think we are ready to rock the world.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to create a big splash.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And then the Zoom, if it's still the similar format, you can have 4, 5, 6, 7, as many people as you want. And like you said, whoever speaks captures the screen, and then next person speaks, captures. So it really ties it together nicely. So it would allow us to have patients on, or to have guests or different experts. And I probably could pull out some pretty amazing people once we get all the bugs worked out. That could be guest experts and guest physicians and scientists and stuff.
That's really cool, and I think that's amazing. Yeah, we're definitely going to figure out all the little nice angles that we're able to go with. I think recording live, it definitely automatically switches to the person. I'm not for sure how that's going to do when it's live streamed. I'm assuming it's going to do the same, but we're going to find out. And yeah, being able to bring people on is easier now than ever before. More people are working from home. Zoom has blown up, and it's become a very common form to be able to do business. I mean, they're even doing school. We all know. It's 2020, and we for those might be watching this video 10 or 20 years from now, this year was a year that's even more unforgettable than 9/11, 2001. This is something once in a 500 year for society. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking. I really don't know what I'm talking about, but well, I do know what I'm talking about, but this is a big time to do this. I think it's really neat. Society is making a change towards a lot more virtual. So it's going to be easy to bring people on, and I appreciate the time with you, Dr. William. This is part 2. We're going to close this one out, and I'm going to throw this into the software movie maker program with the part 1, add that into part 2, and this will be the episode number 5 prequel before we get the live stream hopefully up and running at 1 o'clock. How's that sound?
Good. I'm still seeing quite a disconnect between your voice and your lips, so I don't know what we can do about that. But that's just something to kind of keep an eye on. I'm pretty sure we will be providing most of the technical difficulties with this, but if in your search you could find out anything that can help sync your voice with your with your lip movement, that would takes a little distraction off of the mind.
Yes, that's a good point to make. Maybe there's some type of buffering or speed setting or some type of minor adjustment I can do. And apart from that, I'm pretty sure that upgrading to an even better laptop is might also help that if it's a connection speed or processing speed, because you also have to realize I'm the one hosting it, so my computer is doing a little bit more work than yours. So, and this is just this is one of the lower end. So once we get rolling, I'll be able to get one of the a souped up Lamborghini computer that we can work from. Heck yeah! So
Okay.
I'm super excited, Doctor, and this is just the start. So it's 12:15 right now, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We can join back at 10 till or 5 till, somewhere around there. So that'll give us about 35 to 40 minutes. And I'll try to get upgraded, get everything ready by then, send you another link on the email, and then we'll go from there.
You're doing a lot of patch and pasting. If it turns out that 2 is a little better, I'm really flexible. Like if you're getting a program and hooking it up or doing something. So any time is good. So if we can't quite make 1, we can make 1:30 or 2 or whatever works.
I'm pretty sure that 1's going to be, well, thank you for being flexible. I'm pretty sure 1's a good target. And it shouldn't take long to upgrade. I'm pretty sure they make it flawless as much as possible for them to be able to, accommodate people and get paid. So I don't think it's going to take too much time to get that upgraded. So, and then we're going to go from there, Doctor, and I'll send you the email and I'll talk to you then.
So a new email, new link.
New room, new email, new link.
Okay, very good.
Third time's a charm.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right,
okay.
Bye.
Okay.
All right, so we're recording. This is the 3rd recording, and we're just testing. Right now, we are not live streaming, and I did upgrade to Pro, but and I also reset my computer. I am not seeing the 3 little button option icon on my tool menu bar down here that gives me the option to live stream. I've looked through about every button I could push and tried to find a way to be able to make that happen. I sent a feedback to the company, asked them if they can send me an email. And so what I think we're going to have to do with this, we'll just continue recording. The last recording.
Or do you want to give them an hour or 2 to kind of play with it, and you just give me a call whenever you also have these green, it looks like you have green things on your eyeballs, like, okay, that stopped. They're not there now.
Yeah, I noticed it whenever I would look up, I'd be able to see that disappears. It's the lighting in the room, but no, I don't want to wait for them to get back. We can just go ahead and do a short presentation. And
okay. The thing, the green leaves all over your face are a little different, but it just looks like you're supporting raw cannabis. So we'll go with that.
Hey, that's
confetti.
The whole point. Yeah.
You're supposed to throw Skittles or raw cannabis. Okay, well, let's go with it.
So here's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna let you have the open mic again for a little while. Here, my little one's coming in here.
Yeah, I see that. Hello, little one. Hello.
I've got the earbuds, so she just sees you on there, and she's like, "Who is that?
Whoa, who is that?"
She's a treasure.
Yeah. Oh, she has a sucker that is now freed from the stick.
Well, no, it's still on the stick, but
I don't think so. I think she just pulled it off.
no, she still got it on there.
Oh, okay.
Ya, ok, baby.
Nice.
Voy a dejar a él hablar. Él va a hablar ahorita. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna go ahead and mute my audio. That'll bring the video full on your end, and you can just have free mic for a few minutes and talk a little bit more about who you are, and to people who might have never seen you before. And then you can also do a clip, and we can edit that out, or we can cut that clip out and put it into an email invitation file for people who already know of you. And so you can say, here is the link for the YouTube channel, the podcast, if for them to be able to watch it, and they would need to subscribe and to get LinkedIn, plus obviously an introduction. Hey, I'm back and we're doing something new. Follow along as we're figuring it out, type of thing. So
Probably if you sent me a little script, because those sound like quite important details, and I would want to make sure I got them all correctly spun together. It could be something that you could do because you understand the sequence and priorities more so than I do.
Well, I think we're both figuring it out together, but yeah. So I say just go for it. Talk to people who talk as though you're talking to people who've never heard of you, and give some talk also for people who have. And we can just cut, and this is just raw footage. We'll be able to cut and paste and play with, and then we'll also use this, put it with the 1, 2, and the 3rd, that we can come out as our number 5th episode. Even though we're not live streamed, we're getting it recorded. So I'll just upload it just like we have with the last, and we'll just keep making progress and steps forward until we get to live stream.
So I'm a little reluctant to kind of go back over what I did earlier. I mean,
you don't have to go back over that. You don't have
Okay.
to go back over anything that you talked about earlier. If you want to continue off where you left off, or it's open mic, and just shoot for maybe 20-30 minutes, and something short, potent, powerful, and then we'll just keep going from there.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So welcome. This is Dr. William Courtney. For those of you who I've not met before, I am involved in an unusual branch of cannabis. My particular and considered interest is in the area of non-psychoactive raw cannabis. There are many benefits that accrue to the individual who has access to raw cannabis, and a small sideline, the availability of cannabis sprouts is going to ease access to many people who don't have access to plants, which if you're growing them indoors can take up space and power and light and be kind of a complex activity. But cannabis sprouts are a nice entry for those that are new to the area of dietary cannabis. So given that there's not a lot of people talking about dietary cannabis, though, as you go to do a Google, there are more and more that are bringing it up, and I'm greatly pleased by the number of people that are introducing ways to juice and use raw cannabis. For those who have not looked at other YouTubes, and this is their first kind of entry to that area, the biggest things with cannabis, and particularly raw cannabis, is the terpenes are the aromatic molecules that create the aroma and flavor, and those can be quite peppery. And so a big part of being comfortable with raw cannabis is learning how to combine it with other foods to kind of soften the taste. And the other aspect is the fibrous quality. You want fiber because it's excellent in the diet in terms of its ability to kind of scour the intestines and kind of compensate for so much of our other diet often that is devoid of fiber of any significant amount. But the cannabis fiber is of really high quality as well as quite durable. And while that is excellent once it's in your intestines, it does create a little bit of a palatable issue in terms of it feels quite chunky, whether you're blending it or whether you're going to put the raw cannabis into a sandwich or put it in a salad or blend it into a dressing. So the two big issues with raw cannabis are both the flavor and the fiber, but you eventually learn to manage those, and it's worth the time and effort. And there are a number of other areas where you can learn more about this. And we've been working on a book for 5 or 6 or 10 years, and it's important that we work on. It's essentially it's a practice, trial and error. You get out and you try it, and you find, okay, we need to thin this out a little bit. One issue that many people have crossed is trying to grind the fiber like in a high-speed blender, a Blendtec or Vitamix. Those blenders are so powerful that if you overdo it, meaning like your last smoothie was a little bit crunchy because of the fiber, so you're just going to really let the blender run wild for 4 or 5 minutes to try to reduce that fiber content. You must be careful because you can actually create soups in some of those high-end, high-speed, high-power blenders. And the problem with cannabis is when you cook it in the blender, you then release the non-psychoactive THC, you decarboxylate it, you take the carboxyl acid off of the THC acid and create THC, and suddenly your dietary use can become significantly psychoactive. And so you have to kind of be careful with the blender. And if it's being used medically for younger people, you always want to test it to be certain that you didn't accidentally make a psychoactive smoothie out of it in your attempt to make the smoothie more palatable, meaning try to blend the fiber away. Another way around the fiber is with cannabis sprouts. And that also is not a real common subject or availability, but hopefully we'll be able to help you address that. There certainly is boxcar loads of cannabis seed in Canada, and that can allow you to have access to sproutable cannabis seed, very similar to wheatgrass. You soak it overnight and then rinse it once or twice a day. Key issue is to invert the jar and drain the sprouts so that the sprouts are not sitting in water. If they do, they will rot, and then they'll no longer be edible. But as long as you treat them as well as you would wheatgrass, you can actually make a very amazing amount of raw, high quality, what I call food grade cannabis on your kitchen counter. And for many people living maybe in places that have recently passed or allowed cannabis to be used, and particularly for those at the older end of the spectrum in terms of age, the ability to produce a dietary high quality cannabis in a quart jar on your kitchen counter is a tremendous improvement. There have been people that have been trying to provide cannabis through dispensaries to the public, but it's unusual. I mean, being a living product, if you cut the leaves off, then you have a short period of time before they begin to wilt, and if they're in a moist environment, then they can begin to break down. So when you're doing sprouts, the nice thing about that, as long as you keep washing them and draining them, they will actually be edible for quite a period of time. In terms of the ideal time to harvest the sprout, there is an Eastern European study that identified a cannabinoid spike in the middle of the first month of the plant's life. So once you put the seeds in a quart jar, soak them overnight, and then begin rinsing them, when the 2 little green leaves, cannabis is a dicotyledon, so there are 2 little cotyledon leaves. When those first appear, at that point, you want to write on the jar when the leaves first appeared, and then 10 days from then is when you would like to take the sprouts, put them in your salad, your sandwich, eat a handful of them. Because of the low fiber and mild flavor, you can blend them into a salad dressing, you can blend them into anything. If you're going to make a pesto, be careful. I've had a I've had several different patients who made a pesto out of raw cannabis, and it's perfectly covered. The flavor is incredible. Most people would not even know that the pesto was made from raw cannabis. But the problem is, if you have leftovers and you pull them out and put them in the oven the next day to heat your pesto pasta up, you must remember that that is the heat that will convert the non-psychoactive green raw pesto sauce into a very psychoactive sauce. And so they had a bunch of pesto pasta the night before. It was delicious. There was no psychoactivity. Next day at lunch, they reheated it, and suddenly they have a significant psychoactive event that interferes with their afternoon activities. So be very careful. It's heat that rapidly makes cannabis a psychoactive substance. Given that other animals, and there are some estimates that the plant's been around for 34 million years, hundreds of millions of species eat raw cannabis, psychoactivity has never been an issue for every other animal that uses raw cannabis. Humans, because of their ability to use heat to alter the chemistry of the plant, are the only ones that have that as a significant issue. Other areas of concern, many people will ask questions about, well, what strain should I use? Which particular cultivar is ideal for, I've got MS, or I have early onset adult diabetes, or I've had a minor stroke, or I've had a major heart attack. So what's interesting is that the cells of your body regulate their function through what's called the endogenous cannabinoid system, or the ECS. So the endogenous cannabinoid system uses 21 carbon messenger molecules to communicate with the whole organism, and it allows the biochemistry of the individual cell to perform in accordance with the demands of a multicellular organism, and to give some sense of scope to the complexity of the human body and what we're trying to assist. There are some estimates that the number of stars in our Milky Way galaxy can be estimated at 100 billion. Some maybe go up to 200 billion. So there's a range. But if you accept the estimate that there's 100 billion stars in our galaxy, there are estimates that there are 100 trillion cells in the human body. And how that converts is there are roughly 1,000 spiral galaxies worth of cells. That the scope of that analogy is just really impossible to imagine, but at least it lets you know that the human body is incredibly complex, and yet at one level, it's the chemistry inside the cell that creates estrogens and testosterone and then neurotransmitters and remodels bone and cartilage and produces cells that need to be replaced, red blood cells, white blood cells. And so there's incredible activity, but all of it stems from the function of the intracellular environment. And so you may have heard of the term endocrine, or have a parent, child, or relative who's has an endocrine disorder, has a problem with their thyroid or problem with their adrenal gland. The paracrine is so the endocrine regulates the whole body through circulating various substances through the blood. So you can set metabolic tone through the endocrine system. Well, paracrine is how you coordinate the function of, say, 100 cells that are all trying to produce something in concert. So you have a group of cells that are all trying to produce insulin, or all trying to produce thyroxine or adrenaline. The next level down of regulation is the autocrine. The autocrine is the regulation of the individual cell across its cell membrane. So trying to coordinate the function of the individual cell with the needs of the organism. Well, the lowest or the finest level of regulation is called the intracrine, or the intracellular regulatory system. And so that is, I consider, one of the primary targets of dietary cannabis, is to assist the intracrine, the intracellular regulation. So what is that? Cells have a nucleus where the genetic material determines what that particular cell is supposed to be producing. The cells involved in producing hormones, this is producing cells, this is remodeling fibrinogen, or working with fibrocytes. This one is firing neurons, this is remodeling bone, this one's producing new squamous cells for the skin. But that intracellular environment, they all have a nucleus. The mitochondria is the organelle inside the cell that produces the energy for the organism. And then there will be a synthetic pathway inside of every cell that brings in raw materials, does some kind of a biochemical modification of the raw materials to make an end product that's packaged in a little vacuole, and then that moves to the cell membrane, fuses with that, and then releases its contents into the organism, or into the interstitial space, or the into the space that eventually gets picked up by the venous system and returned to the blood system. And so that process, that synthetic pathway, is really is incredibly remarkable. I mean, whatever the body is doing, it's being synthesized and released to assist in the regulation of this 1,000 spiral galaxy organism. You keep this image of an incredibly complex environment. And interestingly, the endocrine environment is regulated by the endogenous cannabinoid system. So the ECS, or endogenous cannabinoid system, is the deepest level of regulation, and is the one that is supported by the exogenous cannabinoid system. So cannabis is produced outside the body, so that's therefore exogenous, and yet it produces 20 carbon molecules that support the endogenous cannabinoid system, which is involved in regulating cell function. And so, if many people are familiar with other dietary essentials, vitamin C, and if you happen to be deficient in your vitamin C intake, you could end up with a deficiency syndrome like scurvy, or you say you're deficient in vitamin D, you could end up with a condition like rickets, or bone metabolic problems. You can be deficient in vitamin B1 or thiamine, and you can end up with conditions like beriberi. Well, so we're familiar with dietary elements producing deficiency syndromes when they're not present adequately in the diet. Clearly, the compounds in cannabis, which sometimes I refer to them as the terpenocannabinoids, sometimes just the cannabinoids, but in reality, these two group of molecules, the terpenes, are the smaller, the 10 to 15 carbon molecules. Because they're smaller, they're aromatic, meaning they can actually drift away from the plant. When you walk up on a mature cannabis plant, you can smell it hundreds of feet away. Those are the aromatic terpenes that are light enough to just drift off the flower and float through the air and be sufficiently strong that they can be appreciated from quite some distance. So where was I on that whole thing? I got a little distracted there for a second.
You were talking about the endocannabinoid system and how it interacts, the dietary essential as opposed to regular vitamins.
Okay, yeah. So as we move from vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, other dietary essential nutrients, as we move into the terpenocannabinoids, and like I said, sometimes I refer to them as the phytocannabinoids. Those are the 21 carbon. They're the CBD acid, THC acid, CBG acid, CBC, CBN acid. There's 150 of those 21 carbon phytocannabinoids Um, and I consider pretty much all of them dietary essentials. We don't exactly know the function of all of them, but of the ones that we've studied, it's quite amazing how important they are to supporting the endogenous cannabinoid system, which is the system found inside the cells of probably
Okay,
every
doctor.
mammal.
Okay, doctor, let me stop you. So give us an example, because you gave an example of vitamin C and vitamin D, vitamin B1. So give us an example of just one of the cannabinoids that we know of, and why and how it's essential.
Well, CBD is probably has been one of the most studied. I mean, THC is also widely studied, but CBD, I think there's over 10,000 scientific articles on it. And its scope of involvement is pretty much across the spectrum, from individuals with seizure disorders, individuals that have ischemic conditions like strokes or heart attacks, individuals with autoimmune disorders, and I don't have the chart in front of me, but it's just legion, the number of conditions that are related, ameliorated, or prevented by CBD as one of the cannabinoids.
Can we get it? Can you get that chart next time we have a talk?
I definitely could, and I should have some of that more right at hand. But definitely the next talk, we'll pull that pie chart up, because it identifies 7 of the phytocannabinoids and the conditions for which they are beneficial. But besides that,
Now, is that the chart that you had when you were at that Genesis meeting? And it shows a pie chart, and it shows all the different benefits for the cannabinoids.
yes, and pulling that up now, if I can. I was trying to figure out how to share screen. Let me see if this works. Host disabled attendee screen. So if you enable my screen sharing, I can put that chart up right now. But you would have to hook me up with, you have to enable my attendee screen sharing function. You got there, Christopher?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had it muted. I heard what you said. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. So try it now.
Yeah, but okay.
I just switched it.
So is that now on your screen?
Yes, that's now on the main. That's now on the main screen.
Okay. Okay, so at the top, CBD, cannabidiol, anxiolytic. If you look at the United States government patent, 6,630,507 is entitled Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants. Go to Google Patent, download a copy, read it every night before you go to bed until it's memorized. It's just it's an amazing document. But they're always talking about the
I'll be honest with you. Hardly nobody's going to do that.
Well, I mean, once you get into this stuff, I was anti-cannabis for a long time, and a physician that I went to medical school with said, would I write him an approval for, he had plantar fasciitis, and our kids graduated high school together. I mean, I've known this guy forever, but it was like, really, you want me to medically say you can use cannabis? I have no problems with cannabis, but really, what's that going to do that we can't do with pharmaceutical science? But because of his interest, that kind of turned my entire focus to the point where, suddenly I imagine that other people have a similar interest. And if this chart does not drive you to like over the edge of the flat Earth, I mean, if this doesn't really move you to look into it, then come back at it in 6 months or a year, or when a friend has a medical condition, because this chart is just a tip of the iceberg.
Continue with the anxiolytic, and can you explain what each of those mean? Because
yes.
I'm going to be honest with you. Most people have no idea what they're looking at.
Okay, so anxio is anxiety, lytic means to lyse or cut. So anxiolytic means it cuts anxiety, so it's an anti-anxiety aspect.
Yes,
and the federal patent
anti-anxiety is one of the number one reported benefits that people have with cannabis hemp oil
Hmm.
tinctures.
Hmm. Anything that particularly maybe has a little bit of a higher concentration of CBD, or if you use cannabis regularly, the body will sequester the very small amounts that are in every cultivar or every strain of cannabis. And if you eat cannabis regularly 60, 90 days, the body keeps accumulating because it's only going to metabolically eliminate maybe 1/60th of the dose that you consume. So in 60 days, suddenly the amount that you've consumed over 60 days is then going to equal the amount that you're going to eliminate. So your total body content will build and build and build and build and build over 2 months until it finally plateaus, meaning at day 60, you're now going to metabolize as much as you take in one day. So raw cannabis, dietary cannabis is a gradual, it's a dietary thing. It's not it's not a pharmaceutical. You know, most of us want a response immediately. I can wait maybe 30 minutes, you know, a couple hours at the most. But, you know, cannabis is, as a dietary supplement, as a dietary essential, is something that you really have to build build up before you're going to really realize the full benefit. Above, the next one up is antipsychotic. So psychosis, it blocks psychosis, so very potent as an antipsychotic. Anti-epileptic. I did a huge, a patient, a child with Dravet, and his father pushed me to kind of really figure out how to provide that. And after trips to Barcelona and developing strains, we finally came up with a 20+% CBD plant, which allowed
Are you
him.
talking about ACDC?
Yes, that became ACDC. But its first function was first this one family and then 4 or 5 families that had children with that very severe seizure disorder, or, you know, Dravet syndrome, where, I mean, he was having 300 or 400 seizures a day. And they had him on drugs to kind of blunt the physical expression of the seizure, but it didn't do anything. I mean, it made it, he couldn't swim, he, you know, couldn't swallow, had difficulty, he would choke on his food, and it really was not, the treatment that he was on for 4 months or 6 months was just so that other family members wouldn't be so continuously shocked at the extreme expression of the physical aspects of the seizure. So once they started on CBD, they were able to get off of the kind of medicine that he was on, and suddenly this child, for the first time, was able to go in the water and swim and eat and stop drooling, and just, and mental health improved dramatically. And I, you know, wrote that that experience, that individual and the treatment up, and combined it with 4 or 5 other families that had children with real severe seizure disorders. But that paper was rejected by the International Cannabinoid Research Society. But interestingly, 9 months later, the role of CBD in Dravet became an orphan drug status application, and a large pharmaceutical company took that research and created a kind of a commercial product out of it. I mean, it's just CBD.
The word interesting is, yes, quote unquote, interesting.
Yeah.
I have a amazing story there. We mentioned ACDC. I read an article that you shared, or Kristen shared on her Facebook page, and there were quite a few other people who brought that up. And ACDC, a friend of mine told me about that strain, and I want to bring up a screen share. I'm going to try to test this myself. And okay, so I've got a screen share.
I'm going to stop share so you can do that.
Okay.
Then now you can, there we go. Oh,
Can you see my screen now?
I can.
Okay. Does it show it scrolling down?
It does. It's scrolling down.
Okay, so hightimes.com. You can search higher profile Dr. William Courtney. I just brought that up really quick. And it comes in here to explain. Here's an important part that we started to get into with episodes 2 and 3 of the podcast as far as your education. We talked about the University of Michigan with a Bachelor of Science in Microbiology, but we did not get to the doctorate of medicine yet from the Wayne State University, and then also interning in his residency in psychiatry in the California Pacific Medical Center. So there's more to your story that we're adding on to what we've already talked about. And it says here, you're currently a member of the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine, the International Cannabinoid Research Society, the International Association of Cannabis as Medicine, and the Society of Clinical Cannabis. Apart from that, you're also teaching continual medical education courses in clinical cannabis, which is basically what we're doing here right now. This article came out in 2000. This came out. It was shared at least last posted March 10th of 2020 by Sharon Letts. And interesting article. It talks about you as the father of ACDC, as you were just explaining.
If we can we go back to that first paragraph, and where we're at this point is in the last couple of days we're trying to open up a Dominican Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine and a Thailand Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine. So we're trying to make a template for educating physicians, nurses, anyone in the area of healthcare that wants to learn. I mean, you can go to the pharmacy and get Epidiolex, which is nothing but CBD, and you can. That's about $30,000 a year. No one on the island that I currently live on could afford that. But you can grow it yourself for $5 or $10. And so what I'm doing in this third world is trying to bring down the education for the medical professionals, bring in, the genetics are interesting and useful for very acute treatments. But if you, it's important to know that if you just begin eating whatever you've got, and as you use that consistently, every cultivar is going to have a particularly strong strain. There are some people say, oh, I got a THCV strain that's got 6% THCV, or I got a 20% CBD strain, or I got a 14% CBG strain. All the other 149 cannabinoids are there. They're going to be present in a smaller amount when you pick a strain that is notable for a particular cannabinoid, phytocannabinoid, but the other ones are there, and the other ones will slowly build up because, if you eat 60 micrograms, only one is going to be metabolized that first day. And so then the next day you're going to have 59 micrograms, and then you eat another 60. So you add 60 and 59, and then you're going to metabolize 2 micrograms. And on day 3, you're going to have 50, 58, 59, and 60 micrograms. So you essentially, your total body content keeps building, which, so if you take a cultivar, a particular phytocannabinoid that's maybe not present in a large amount in the strain that you have available, if your continued dietary consumption will support and raise that level to plateau, it's my estimate that it could be within 60 days. Anything that's present will eventually be it's sequestered. The body pulls it out of the blood in 20 to 30 minutes and stores it in fat tissue. It tenaciously holds on to it and releases very small amounts. So it's the body's tremendous interest and management of the dietary cannabinoids that allows it to compensate for variations from strain to strain. So, you got 50 different countries, 50 different strains. Each of them are going to be unique genetically, or could be, and they're going to have strong suits and weak suits. But interesting, the human body will compensate, meaning it will, whatever present in very trace amounts, it will grab a hold of those and slowly build those amounts up. Because of that incredible. I mean, you look at most drugs and you say, well, you need to take the medicine once a day, or twice a day, or 3 times a day, or 4 times a day, and the frequency of dosing is based on how quickly it's turned over. You look at cannabis, and that dose could last for 2 months. And then, so if you take one dose every day for 2 months, then your total body contents could be 60 times your daily dose.
Okay, doctor. You meant we were on the pie chart. We went to the higher profile, And let's bring that pie chart back up. But before we do, I wanted to help bring people up to speed as far as what a strain is. And for one of the ways that I've explained to people on the street or in public is, imagine that you have a pet dog. Well, your pet dog might be a particular breed of dog, but there's multiple different breeds of dogs. So I explained to people that cannabis has a male and a female plant, and they can be bred. And just the same way that many of our people who are animal lovers and dog lovers understand that specific breeds that we have today were created over time through breeding. And so that's basically what we have with when we talk about a strain. It's essentially, in rough terms comparison, it's essentially a different breed, a different dog breed. And other than that, the endocannabinoid system, another thing too that I tell people when I'm trying to introduce them to the concept of what the endocannabinoid system is. Well, first of all, I ask people, have you heard of your circulatory system? Did you learn about that in high school? Did you learn about your respiratory system? Did you learn about your skeletal system, your central nervous system? Do you know that you have an immune system? And so most people will answer, yeah, I've heard of all those things. Well, one of the things that you have not heard about is your endocannabinoid system. And so one of the reasons why we haven't heard about it is because it wasn't discovered until the mid-1990s. So with the first cannabinoid receptor. And so this is a subject, the endocannabinoid system is the system that's inside of our bodies that interacts with the cannabinoids. And from what I understand from my reading is the endocannabinoid system modulates the immune system. And so it's basically one way, you can correct me if I'm wrong here on this, doctor, but it's basically like if I've got a car and there's no driver in it, but it automatically takes off and drives on its own, it's going to crash. And in a way, that's kind of how I compare it with people on their immune system. But the endocannabinoid, the ECS, is basically the driver for the car, for the immune system, because it modulates it and it promotes homeostasis. And anybody who has never heard of the word homeostasis, that's what makes you healthy, keeps you healthy. So, and then I go another step further, and I explain to people that from a biblical standpoint, oh, the kids are playing. From a biblical standpoint, the tree of life is mentioned in the Bible, and it mentions that that's a physical plant. Now, there are some people that's in the cannabis community who make claims and say that that's the tree of life, and in some regards it may be, may not be. But out of all the plants that we know of today in this world, based on our study of botany, and with our combining that with our study and understanding of nutrition and dietary studies, if there's any plant that's closer to or closest to the tree of life, it has to be the cannabis plant. And the cannabis plant has more cannabinoids than any other plant, and the cannabinoids are what interact with the receptors in the endocannabinoid system. So that's kind of a big thing for me to say. But what's your opinion on that? Did I get anything wrong there? And confirm that for me, doctor, and then continue with the chart if you could.
I would. I tend to pull away from general discussions like that, but on this particular case, I think you're right on point. I mean, my understanding of what this plant can do for the prevention of disease, the maintenance of health, the restoration of health, is nothing but an amazing ability. And so, yeah, I don't think it could be expressed more clearly than you did, Christopher.
So, I mean, just to reiterate, the endocannabinoid system modulates the immune system, and it is in charge.
One good example, there is a YouTube clip out there that has on the first page, it says antigen presenting cell, and It was a YouTube video that was made, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it's a good example for people that are just coming into the benefit of cannabis as a food in terms of how it
What's the name of
impacts the
that?
immune system. The antigen presenting cell is actually printed on the first slide of the YouTube. So if you pull the YouTube up, you'll see antigen presenting cell. Well, that's a macrophage, which is a large white blood cell that eats other things. And its job is to monitor for abnormal changes in cell function. If a cell has been inflamed, like say there's gastric reflux at the esophagus because the person has the sphincter there maybe not as tight as it needs to be, and gastric acid washes up into the esophagus and inflames it, and eventually that inflamed esophageal lining will become what's called Barrett's esophagus, which is where it's thickened and red. And if you continue to wash gastric acid over that Barrett's esophagus, it'll progress onto esophageal cancer. Well, the role of the antigen presenting cell is to keep an eye on cells, and when they're chronically inflamed and begin to become dysplastic, means their genetic and cell structure is beginning to change before they become neoplastic, which is a neoplastic cell is a cell that has lost cell contact inhibition. So cancer allows cells to just grow and grow and grow. They normally, once they bump up against each other, they shut down continued growth and prevent overgrowth. But cancer is a cell in which they've lost that ability to use cell contact inhibition, and then they grow and grow and grow, and they deprive the host of materials and eventually take the host's life. Well, these so the antigen presenting cell, if it's operating, will notice that there's inflammation in these cells, and that inflammation is progressing, and they will actually take off the cell surface marker. Every cell has an address on it that's unique to that cell. And so this cancer cell has a unique address on it. The antigen presenting cell will bite off that address, migrate that to the nearest lymph node, and present that address to the immune system, which then will mount a response sending out T killer cells, T helper cells, T regulatory cells, and antibodies. And so you got this humoral and cell-mediated immunity system that is now activated because the antigen presenting cell finally figured out, I don't know what it is, but I want it removed. I want every cell that looks like that killed and removed from the body. And this happens regularly. I've heard some estimates, 100,000 times a day. It's removing inflamed, irritated, abnormal cells. And interestingly, the maturation process of that antigen presenting cell is under the endogenous cannabinoid system. And it's to me, it's unfortunate that we're labeling this 20 carbon system endogenous. Icosanoid would be a more medical description of a 20 carbon molecule. And when you call it cannabinoid, there's a large segment of population that is going to knee-jerk pull back, shut down, close their ears. And so when you call it the endogenous cannabinoid system, they just say, no, not me, not my church, not my county, not my political party. This conversation is over. I'm not listening anymore. If we would use the term icosanoid, then both sides of the aisle could say, okay, I've got a problem with my 20 carbon molecules, and I now have cancer because, they're not functioning very well. And if I eat, if I eat carrots and get a vitamin that helps my immune system, that's good. If I eat cannabis and I get vitamins, dietary essentials that help my immune system, that should be accessible to everybody, not just those that are comfortable with the term cannabis or the use of cannabis, because cannabinoids, if you call them icosanoids, then they're universally required, and their use is gonna flow back to this chart. Somewhere there's gonna be neoplasia, antiemetic, anti-proliferative, and anti-cancer. So this function right here is the ability of cannabidiol to have an impact and to block cancers. Proliferations are benign tumors growths. Cancers are cells that have lost that cell contact inhibition. So that's just one of the functions of CBD. Anti-ischemias, heart attack and strokes, anti-spasmodic, muscle cramp spasm, vasorelaxants, high blood pressure, neuroprotective. The federal government patent is cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. Huge, huge, huge. It's like anti-epileptic. You know, it doesn't have as large of a percent of the population, but if you have a child having 400 seizures, you know, that will dominate the family's focus. And this molecule, you can either pay $30,000 a year or 10, depending on whether or not you can. If you don't have, in Dominica, you know, 30,000 US dollars is like 80 or 90,000 Caribbean dollars. There's nobody that could afford it, but everybody can afford the CBD from this plant, and their children are as entitled to its benefits in controlling, you know, devastating medical conditions. And if we want to keep progressing along, go ahead.
Yeah, so I tried to experiment and do a share screen to bring up as well. I'm not for sure how it turned out on the video. We'll have to look after it's finished. But I brought up the antigen presenting cell, found an image or two online, and let me bring my video back up so people can see me. And okay, so we're looking at that chart, and we know.
If you share, can you share that screen with the antigen presenting cell?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me find it again. And can you see it there? Does it show that?
So that is the you know, the antigen presenting cells. That is the type of cells. There was, if you do a search from Dr. William Courtney, there will be a kind of PowerPoint on APCs. So essentially, it's a discussion of those cells. But I mean, they're such a key demonstration of one of the most amazing aspects of cannabis as a dietary essential is it improves the ability of the body to detect, destroy, and remove early cancers before they become, you know, a disease that threatens your life. So they're an excellent example of, I mean, for that reason and that reason alone, it should be standard included in grade school, middle school, high school, you know, dietetic programs, and it should be on the table of everyone who would like to not, you know, go through the ravages of cancer. You know, there's really.
Yeah, I looked it up. I couldn't. I mean, somebody else can do a search for that, or you know.
And next time, what I'll do is I will pull up. I'll pull up the Google search and show what it looks like so they could. But it's just essentially it's a continued discussion.
Let's talk about how you. Let's talk a little bit about your story, and then we'll probably wrap up a little bit. But we're going to talk about your story and your Kristen's story, as far as how you two met, and let's tie that in with however that ties in with drinking the cannabis raw and your discovery of that. Can we move on to that subject before we end? And how's that sound?
Yes. So I had been in California, moved there from Michigan, and been there for maybe 10, 15 years. Kristen was going to go to Harvard and pursue her higher education, but she felt her higher calling was to move aggressively into the cannabis community field and in the literature on cannabis. And the two of us were members of the Mendocino Medical Marijuana Association, MMMA, and we were proposing guidelines for the county for trying to include medical marijuana and educate the public. And we would do presentations to the district attorney and sheriff's department and the community at large. And I had gone to an ICRS, I think it was up in Saint Savoie in Canada, and I was impressed with the number of young men and women and the studies that they were doing. And so I called Kristen up and said, you really should be here. You should have a poster. You should be, you have such a story. Her personal medical history is a whole.
Share a little bit, just a short segment of her medical history, and obviously, and another question too: is this before you two were married?
Oh yeah. This was when we first met. So she had developed an autoimmune disorder, of
At
juvenile
what age?
room.
Yeah.
She was maybe I don't know, it was 8 or 11. It was quite young, but it quickly, the juvenile rheumatoid quickly evolved into systemic lupus erythematosus. So she developed SLE, also, at 12 or 13. And then she was treated by Mayo Clinics, I think, around North America, and had been on incredible number of medications, methotrexate and Plaquenil, and became allergic to a lot of them, and became very steroid toxic, which is steroid toxicity is what you have. Your face fills up with fluids. It's called moon faces, and centripetal obesity. You put a lot of weight on your torso, but your limbs do not put on weight. So there's a very distinct physical appearance of someone who is toxic on steroids, and they just kind of kept throwing more and more of them at her, and they were telling her that you're probably not going to live past your mid-20s. It would be quite amazing if you lived that long. And so it was a pretty rough adolescence with she had interstitial cystitis, and she would go to see the urologist and sit in the waiting room with. There'd be six 80-year-old gentlemen and one 18-year-old young lady at the urologist, and
you said interstitial
cystitis.
And so did the juicing cannabis raw help with that?
Oh yeah, interstitial. So that's an autoimmune disorder against the lining of the bladder. So it's she's had so many autoimmune conditions. And cannabis, particularly raw cannabis, is it's not instantly. It's not like give me a shot of steroids and it's going to knock the inflammation down today, but it is amazingly effective when integrated daily. And when I say that, I mean if you can eat it regularly for a month or two, your body levels on all the cannabinoids will finally max out or reach a plateau, and then you'll have the maximum benefits.
When you say eat, how much are you talking? And are we talking like a small 30 milliliter bottle like people can pick up now with a full spectrum hemp oil, or are we talking a juice, a full plant of juice a day?
Yeah. We were talking, at that point we were juicing leaf. This was before sprouts came along. And so we would produce, 4, 8 ounces of, so what we would do when we finally came to be living together is you'd grow a plant, you'd go out and you'd hose it down, wash the leaves, get the dust off. So you'd wash the plant really, really well, and then let it dry in the air. And so when you hear me refer to dry leaf, it's as opposed to leaf that's soaked up in water in a bowl, so sodden leaf. So dry leaf is leaf that's been cleaned. You take that dry leaf off, run that through a wheatgrass juicer. Is probably as compatible of a device as there is, but the pulp that you eject out of that wheatgrass juicer still is highly valuable or highly potent. But the juice that comes out is a very intense leaf juice that generally is mixed with other fruits or vegetables because it's just so intense in terms of flavoring. So you would mix it with carrot, apple, pear, berry, whatever kind of juices you would have to kind of shift the flavor and palatability. The pulp that comes out the end, there was a story where we used to save that pulp and we'd put it in a bag and put it in the freezer. And a woman was helping us prepare a meal one time and she thought it was chopped spinach because it looks just like chopped spinach. And so she pulled out a package of the leaf that had been run through the juicer and baked it into a souffle, and that heat activated it. And my father was out visiting at that particular point, and comes from the Clean Plate Club, the Depression era, where if you take some food and you put it on your plate, you finish it. You don't say, oh, it doesn't taste very well, or I don't like this. So he put a pretty healthy portion on his plate and ate the whole thing. And I was out in the backyard doing something. I came in, and my father had kind of fallen asleep and was sitting at the table with his face in his spaghetti. And I walked in and go, Irv, what are you doing? Why are you asleep at the dinner table and on your dinner plate? And so that's the potency of what many people just throw into the garbage. But be careful if you decide to cook it up. The THC acid is non-psychoactive in that condition, but once you bake it, suddenly it becomes a very psychoactive.
Right. So she had these autoimmune diseases when you met her, and so you started juicing the plant. And now I know on that, what was the name of that last disease that we just mentioned?
Interstitial cystitis.
Yes. Now, from what I understand, because I have a loved one who was just diagnosed with that, which is why I brought that up, because they told me to ask you about it. And does that, if I'm thinking correctly, that includes, there's usually quite a bit of pain with that, and regular urinating, where a person would have to wake up 6, 7, 8, 9 times at night to urinate. Is that what she was suffering with as well?
Yeah, also called painful bladder condition. IC, and not many people know about it, but it's called painful bladder. It's raw inflamed bladder, and then uric acid is a wash on it, and so it's definitely is a when she had urethral procedures and installation of chemotherapies and chemicals and drugs. I mean, they put all kinds of stuff into her bladder trying to blunt the inflammation or the pain of the process.
Well, this particular person was just diagnosed with that, and the doctors are recommending Botox to try to replace some of the skin on the inside. But now that I'm hearing this story, what would that person need to do in this case? How many leaves? How many pounds? Let's say the person weighs 120 or 140 pounds. What do they need in order to help overcome that illness?
I would love to see her eating 4 ounces, if not a little bit more, of dry leaf juice. If you take the leaves and then you put them in a bowl of water and let them sit there for a couple hours, they will swell up and a lot of water will go into the leaf. And so a very small amount of leaf will produce a half a cup of juice. If the leaves are dry, there's not a lot of water in them, but the juice that comes out is very concentrated.
You're saying juice. You're saying dry leaf, but freshly picked. So like it's just now coming off the plant.
Yeah. So it's you wash the leaves while they're on the plant and it's living. Then you let the leaves dry. Then you pull the leaves off and run them through the juicer. And it's a lot like wheatgrass. And wheatgrass is kind of a dry plant material. It's not real succulent. And you make wheatgrass out of a material that is low in water content. Well, cannabis leaf that has not been soaked in water is quite dry, but there is juice inside of it. And so if you juice the dry leaf, not one that's been, and it's confusing because there was a period where we were drying leaf and using the dried leaf and putting it in capsules. That was preceded the juicing phase. And so that dried leaf is, you take the leaves and you put them over a heat source until they are crumbly, then you turn them into a fine powder and put them into capsules, and there's a benefit from that. But when you take the living leaf that is not soaked in water, therefore is a dry leaf, it produces a lot more juice. It'll produce enough juice, and it'll be so strong that you will want to dilute it. I mean, you will want to combine it with other juices, either fruit or vegetable, to
Okay,
increase its power.
so maybe a small plant, half of that every day, or maybe a small plant, all the leaves, or maybe how many leaves, how many dozens of leaves. I know that it's variable, obviously, because every plant grows at different heights, and of course there's different times. But
Yeah,
to get a little bit more specific.
Yeah, there's extreme variation. I mean, if your plant is in the second or third month, I mean, you've gone through that little spike in the first month. At the end of the first month, there's very little cannabinoids in the plant, but the plant, could be 12, 15 inches. I mean, it's a 1 month old plant. The phytocannabinoids begin to accumulate during the second month and continue accumulating through the third and peak at the end of the third month. So between day 80 and 90 is when the vegetative leaf is at its most, the concentrations are highest in the leaf of the plant. Once the plant goes in the flower phase, the concentration and quality of the leaf fall off sharply, and I mean, as a dramatic drop in the phytocannabinoids that are present in the flowering plant leaf. If you keep the plant in veg, the leaves stay in that robust nature. So if you support them in where we're living now, they don't have the same type of plants that are in Northern California, because it's a 12-12 environment that we live in, whereas up in Northern California, it's the length of the night that determines whether or not the plant is driven to go into flower to produce seeds. So you got very short nights in the spring and summer, and then as the nights get longer and longer, it tells the plant that winter is coming, and it's the length of the night that drives the plant to produce seed to overwinter and be ready the following year.
Okay.
So the vegetative, it depends a lot whether you're talking about the first month, second month, third month. That really has an impact on the concentration in the plant. But any cannabis, I mean, first, second, third, if you're getting 3-4 ounces of juice from the leaf that has not been soaked in water, and it's really key, because you want to wash the leaves and make sure there's no dust and bugs, but a lot of people just end up, you kind of stumble. If you leave the leaves in a bowl of water and you leave them there for 2 to 3 hours, suddenly you just get all of this juice. You're getting a cup and a half, and everyone can have some. It's going to be a lot different than if the leaves were washed and then allowed the excess water to drain off. Or ideally, if you have living plants, you wash them on the living plant, then harvest the leaf and juice them. And so the amount of juice can vary significantly depending on.
Yeah, so you want 3 to 4 ounces of freshly picked, maybe within the day that they're picked, or 2 days at the most.
Yeah, that's where sprouts become interesting, because with sprouts, they're vital alive. You pick leaves, if you put them in soft plastic bag in the refrigerator, the 10 to 15 carbon, the small terpene molecules actually can pass through a soft plastic bag. And the reason that you use a turkey roaster bag is that it's a very tightly made film, and the terpenes cannot escape through that bag. And so, if you're going to store them, you want to store them in a glass jar or a turkey roaster bag. You don't want to put them in a typical Ziploc bag, because very important molecules will get sucked out. The reason
mason jars.
That's perfect. Glass is perfect with a tight rubber seal. That really works. Because other than that, the frost-free freezer works because it sucks moisture out of the refrigerator. Well, it'll suck the terpenes out with it. And the terpenes by themselves are anti-inflammatory and anti-neoplastic and antibacterial and antiviral. There's a lot there's a really good reason you don't want to pick the leaves, put them in the refrigerator, then come back 3 days later and have a shadow of their former self, and you're thinking that you're getting the full benefit of the plant.
Well, let's say somebody juices a plant, juices the leaves, and they now have the juice inside of a cup, or they put it in. Well, that didn't really show up, did it? It's white. Yeah, that's a white cup, and so if they put it into a glass mason jar or whatnot and put that in the freezer, how long is that juice probably good for?
Uh, that we certainly could use more studies in that area to specifically identify. But if it's sealed in glass, the terpenes aren't going to be contained, and that's a good thing. That and the cannabinoids are too big to leave. There is kind of breakdown in the leaf material. I mean, they'll tell you, don't freeze spinach more than 3 months or 9 months. And so there's a breakdown in the fibrous structure of the leaf, but I've not seen any studies to show that there's actually a loss. And so that's an excellent question. And with a little bit of
So,
research,
so in
we should
theory,
analyze that.
so like here in the United States right now, for instance, we passed the U.S. Farm Bill, the Industrial Hemp Farm Bill in 2018. So there's many states. I think there's only 3 or 4 who are trying to say, stubbornly, hey, no, we don't want anything to do with this plant because it's just it's the devil. And so, but we have a lot of people who are farming industrial hemp, and most of them, if not all of them that I know of, are doing so on a commercial scale to produce a final product. But I don't know of anybody who is producing an actual juice, a concentrated form of juice. And I do know that here in Massachusetts, for instance, the cannabis control, I can't remember the name of the exact office, but I spoke with one of the people on the phone, and they told me that the raw plant has to be destroyed, like ground up. One place I called them because I asked him, I said, would it be possible if I could juice the leaves before you destroy them? Because these people they're just harvesting the buds in the commercial operations for the THC side. And then you also have the industrial hemp farmers who haven't even started to reach out to them. But I am on this journey of juicing cannabis raw every day. And so I'm thinking that in theory, if a person could legally juice the plant before it's destroyed and ground up with cardboard, there's possibly not only an opportunity to get a good large continuous supply year round of fresh juice, but also a potential for the market and for them to capitalize. One man's trash is another man's treasure, so to speak, on the THC side. But on the hemp side, on that, typically people are taking their plants up, to harvest at the same time. As hold on a second, baby. Dame un momento, por favor. Me da venga aquí. So what I'm thinking is, say hi.
Hi.
So what I'm thinking is, I could probably find somebody who's about to harvest quite a bit of product on the industrial hemp side, and possibly juice a 2 to 3, 4 months, 6 months supply of juices and store them in the freezer. I have already spoken with one hemp producer who said that, I can have all of their stuff that's left over, that basically, they're not under the regulations the same as the THC side. The industrial hemp, there's they don't have to destroy it. They can just throw it on the side of the hill there, or whatever it is they do with the stalks and the leaves. But what do you think about that as a viable option for accumulating a good portion of juices just for my personal consumption and maybe some close friends and family? What's your thinking on that?
I probably would go with the medicinal plants leaf if that's available, because they're been selected for phytocannabinoid concentration. Some of the hemp, gets down to 1 to 2 to 3%, whereas the other plants are going to be in the 15 to 25% weight to weight. So there'd be a much higher concentration. They take the flower, but the leaf that supports that flower is quite stunning. Like I said, there is a dramatic drop off. A lot of growers will de-leaf early to kind of let the sunlight get into the flower, and so that's a real ideal leaf, because the leaf is younger, so it's going to be in much more potent and better condition. And they're pulling these leaves off just to facilitate the flower processing. So that would be best. And then as you go into the flowering phase, that leaf quality does deteriorate, but it probably still be quite a bit higher than the cannabinoid content in the hemp. But the hemp, I've heard some hemps can have up to 40% CBD, and that seems crazy because I didn't think they could get much above 30. But what's interesting through that sequestration process, if there are other trace cannabinoids in the hemp plant, after 60 days, those trace amounts will be present at 60 times the amount that's in the initial plant material that's consumed. So I would like to see what happens to the serum levels after regular consumption of hemp, because obviously that's going to be the easiest one to work with and be approved. And and the question is, what are the trace levels and what becomes of them through sequestration over 60 days?
Right. Really great information. I'm super excited to have to have you just as a friend. I mean, you're very you're very invaluable. The amount of investment that you've put in yourself with understanding these things is quite phenomenal. Just to finish the story a little bit, going back with Kristen before we end, because I interrupted you when I heard the name of that disease. So tell me if we can start off there from that point and share a little bit more about you two and how you fell in love and why she's still alive and how long that's been and whatnot. And if you could, please.
Yeah. So I was at the ICRS up in Saint Savoy, and I was just so impressed with the young women and men that were presenting posters and presenting oral presentations at the ICRS, and I called her up and said, this would be an ideal place for you to rub elbows with truly peers who have a similar interest and understanding, and they may not be quite as dependent upon it as you are, but they certainly are focusing their lives on studying it. And
about what year was that when you guys first met and started getting to know each other?
I think it was around 2007. 2007 was, I believe, the ICRS that we met at, and pretty much we got together after that and have been attending the International Cannabinoid Research Society symposia. We've gone to Israel, and well, it wasn't in Morocco, but we've traveled the world looking for cultivars and have been to ICRS and Ireland and multiple times in Germany and other cannabis conferences in France. And we just, you go to one of these conferences and there just are hundreds of basic science, PhD and pre-doc, post-doc individuals. And so it's just such an electric environment because people are so focused on the intricate biochemical maneuvers and impacts and effects. And so it's a wonderful way to kind of, and it's a 5-day conference. I mean, there's a lot of conferences that are 2 or 3 days. This is a full 5 days. And they're really.
What time of the year is that conference? Do they have that annually?
Yeah, generally in June, maybe sometimes the first week of July, or last week of June, but they pretty much is always in that
in Germany
range. Oh no, one year it's in North America, Canada, US. Next year it's in Europe, and then so it alternates back and forth between Europe and US.
What's the name of that conference?
The International Cannabinoid Research Society.
And okay.
The reason I hesitated, it used to be the International Cannabis, but they wanted to upgrade their status and kind of distance themselves from cannabis, and cannabinoid is a more scientific term, and I had a really hard time with being ashamed of it being a plant research society. You know, if it's a biochemical research society, you know, you're in more refined air, and no one quite knows what the term means. But so I was pretty upset when, and then the international, it was international cannabis as medicine. They turned it to cannabinoid medicine, and I really spoke out at that meeting and was upset that they, you know, because if you go to cannabinoid, you're dumping the terpenes, at least theoretically, and the terpenes they multiply the effect of the cannabinoid, so they act independently, and so the cannabis captures the whole incredible potential of this plant, in sharp distinction to any one particular class of chemistry. You know,
you're very passionate about this plant, doctor, and I think one of the reasons why is because your wife, the woman that you love, the mother of your 3 children, would not be alive today. I think that's basically the story that I got from some of the testimonies of you guys. Could you expound upon that a little bit more about, you know, about the reality that she wouldn't be alive today? You wouldn't even have any children if it wasn't for cannabis. Could you expound on that?
And she's presented papers on the role of cannabis on fertility and bonding and nursing, and she's done some very interesting research in that particular area. And like I said, you know, the Mayo Clinic, which is a fairly prestigious organization in the U.S., thought that she would not survive her mid-20s, and even as late as the last 3 or 4 years, local physician, one physician said, "Well, you're lucky to be alive," and a couple of doctors in the emergency room both predicted that in May of 2019 that she wouldn't survive another 30 days, that she would die within the month. And so she's been walking away from misinformed Western medical physicians her entire life, and we're hoping to turn that into a sprint, and with you know, with a kind of renewed access and commitment and integration.
Yeah, well, definitely. She's a treasure trove all in herself, and it's very exciting. Like I mentioned on the last couple podcast episodes, that I'm really happy that you guys are doing well. I noticed right away when I first came across your stuff that you guys are speaking out on some of the most important aspects of this plant that we don't realize. And so I'm really thankful for that. And yeah, hopefully what we can do this weekend is we're going to play around a little bit more with the software and whatnot. But it would be nice if she wants to come on and tell more, because she's really good at speaking. And so if you wanted to talk to her about that, and we can schedule a time for that as well.
And I mean, she has been on the computer working feverishly for 5 or 6 days, and we're committed to trying to wrap a project up. But I will make sure that she's able to join us on Sunday, and we can get her perspective and history, and we look forward to kind of, because I mean, like you said, she can verbalize what it's like to have 2 doctors in one day say that, you know, you're not going to be alive in a month. And most of us would be undone by such a thing, but because she's had such chronic experience with it, she says, well, yeah, maybe not, and goes home and continues to amaze and baffle the Western medical practitioners.
How many years ago was it? Or when was the first time that she was told that, you know, she had maybe like a month to live or whatever?
Well, when she was a teenager, she was told that, you know, that she wouldn't live past her mid-20s. And then pretty much every time you know, what happened in 2019 was she went into this series of respiratory arrests where she would just stop breathing. And her eldest daughter, who then was maybe 10, couldn't do sternal massage hard enough on her own sometimes to get her to inspire. And she, for some reason, discovered that if you pick the tongue up and off the airway, that then she will start breathing again. And so as a young child, she discovered how to resuscitate her mother in a way in keeping with her physical size. And the doctors at that point were saying, her family jumped on the plane and flew out because she wasn't going to make it to the end of the month. But we one day at a time.
Yeah, one day at a time. And so she was told this when she was in her mid-teens, and she's had 3 kids now. She was told she wasn't ever going to have any kids. She was told she wasn't going to live past her mid-20s, and she has 3 kids. She's still alive. And how old is she? I gather she's somewhere close to 40. I think she's a little bit older.
Just turned 40 this last November.
Right. So that's an amazing testimony, and you guys have a very powerful story. So I want to say thanks for sharing. I've got a call coming. Actually, I'm going to cancel that. Cancel that call. But,
okay, so we will see you on Sunday.
What time? Oh yeah, we'll talk probably 5 o'clock, if that's good for you, or if you want to do a little bit sooner. I'm going to try to play around some more and see if we can work out what needs to be done for live streaming. I upgraded to Pro. I was thinking I was going to have the option to be able to live stream, but let me play around, and we might do something around noon or 1 o'clock. Does that sound cool?
1, 2, 3. As it gets close to 5, I've been up for 12, 14 hours, and so 3 is a little better than 5. 5 is okay. The 6 and 7s get to be marginal because I'm at that point.
Let's take let's shoot for noon, 1 o'clock to kind of try to give it another start, and obviously bring on Kristen if she's up to it. And does that sound good?
It sounds excellent. And given what you're trying to do with the live streaming, if you can get together by 3 or 4, I mean, if you're close to, we'll talk by phone and let me know, how that's going. And if a couple hours will be useful on your end, we will just have another cup of coffee and cruise on in.
All right. That sounds like a lot of fun, Doctor.
Okay.
I'm super excited.
Yes.
You look really healthy, and I'm excited to hear what you had to say. And thank you so much for your help.
Yes. Sunday.
All right. We'll talk to you then.
Very good.
Okay.